You guys wanna hear a funny story about this shirt? I think I bought this shirt when I was 18. The punchline isn't the fact that it still fits after all these years, but more so the fact that this shirt I actually wore it to a kaiten sushi place near where I lived. For those of you who do not know, that's like the place with the spinny sushi tables, and the lady who was working there part-time as like one of the servers, they actually complimented me on like this shirt. I think this was the first shirt I ever got complimented on for ever having, so yeah, it has a weird like memory tied to it in that sense. But hey, yes, as you can see from the title of the video, from the very epic shirt and the leak in the background, yes, we are indeed talking about a Vocaloid Doujin event this time around. If anything, it might actually be the biggest one within Tokyo, so some of you might already have heard of it before, because I did think I saw quite a few people coming in from overseas for this event as well. And that's right, we are talking about the Vocaloid Master. So for those of you who are wondering where this name even came from, the Vocaloid Master is basically just a play of the Idol Master, because that was the first big Idol series that actually exists out there, and so they kind of played off of that. It has been going on since 2007, and it has been running maybe about 4 to 5 times each year. The exact number of times is not consistent. More often than not, it's 4, sometimes it goes up to 5. And for some of you, you might actually remember it because of the fact that I was talking about it a lot when I was talking about the Nico Nico Chokaigi, which happens every year within April, because they do actually run one of the instances of this event's hosting together with the Nico Nico Chokaigi as well. And aside from the time that it's run in April, I believe it's also run in January, July, which is when I went to it this time, as well as in November. So at least 4 times a year, with the 5th time being sometimes a thing, sometimes not. That said, the location where it is held as a result, as you can imagine, would vary quite a fair bit, since the Nico Nico Chokaigi is always usually held within Chiba, so it will be held at Makuharimase together with the event itself. For those of you who are interested in the next time it's being hosted, it will be on the 29th of November at the TRC Tokyo Ryutsu Center. And the time I went to in July, it was actually held in why? Like just why? Like, I know that like that area is still considered to be part of Tokyo, and many people do live in Tachikawa. Like, it's a fairly affordable place to live, so people love to live there. But like, bruh, the event was located so far away from central Tokyo. I actually wanted to cry, having to travel all the way across the entirety of Tokyo to get there. Like, it took so long. Like for those of you who are wondering, this is how long it takes just to get there from Tokyo Station alone. The whole thing is just horrible. I don't know why they had to choose it to be there this time. I don't know which I find to be worse. This Actually, maybe no. Maybe it's still not as bad as Chiba. Like, the one good thing is that it was kind of near to Tachikawa. So for those of you who actually want to like go and do a little bit of exploration, Tachikawa actually does have a lot of weeb stuff as well. Quite a few good secondhand stores, especially because of the fact that while it is located in Tokyo and located in a fairly populated area, it's not within one of the big areas where tourists tend to flood to. So you can find a lot of rare stuff if you're gonna go exploring in that area. And it is also the city, at least Tachikawa is, where the Railgun Index light novel series actually based the setting of the city off of for a lot of the designs of why it looks so futuristic the way it does. So for those of you who are interested in that, it might be an interesting place to visit either way. Either way, we went there not to Tachikawa itself, unfortunately, but to visit the Tokyo Tama Mirai Messe, which is located in Hachioji. So the event location itself, the area, the town around it, was fairly populated. Like, it's a little off to the side, but considering the fact that Western Tokyo does tend to be quite populated, it still felt quite a lot like I was within the city itself. I did not see Aeon anywhere, so I didn't feel like I was in the countryside. And the convention center itself was basically a isolated building off of the main road, which I think might have actually been equally as big, if not slightly bigger feeling, because of the fact that the building itself was actually quite massive, than the TRC Ryutsu Center, which is where the event is gonna be held the next time around, and where many of the other Doujin events such as Pinning Cat and the rest are also held. So the building itself, it actually looked a lot more modern from the outside. The hall itself was actually fairly big. It's not on the size of something that is massive like Comic Cat or Reitai Sai, for example, but compared to all of the other small to medium sized events such as Superhero in Time or some of the specific series oriented events, it was actually on the bigger side. The hall itself I think due to the fact that it was meant to be able to hold up to 400 circles, due to the fact that it was about close to 300 instead, there was a decent amount of walking space. So even though there were quite a lot of people filing to the event, it didn't ever feel too cramped to the point where I felt I had no space to walk around, such as what you sometimes get at other events such as Comitia or Punicat, for example, where due to the huge variety of the amount of stuff at the event and the number of circles as compared to the space of the hall, those sometimes felt a little more cramped. So I was actually kinda glad that there was enough space to walk around, slowly browse, especially in between the circles where it felt like you could fit maybe 3 or 4 people standing side by side, which meant that you didn't really get much congestion or people shoving as a result. The interesting thing with the ticketing for this event is the fact that unlike many of the other smaller scale Doujin events, or like even the Blue Archive one for example, they actually sold AM and PM tickets. So if you went in the afternoon instead, the event basically would be cheaper, and I think if you went slightly in the later half of the morning as well, the ticket price would steadily decrease, and that kind of does make sense since the later you get there, the later and less time you actually have to spend within the event, and so the likelier the chance that stuff might also have sold out. So they actually tend to cut the price, kind of like with what Comicat does, to ensure that if you don't want to spend too much to rush in early to try and secure something, but you just want to leisurely experience the event at a low price, you can still do it fairly affordably with the PM tickets instead. That said, unlike Comicat, this event was actually a lot shorter as well, and it did start a lot later, which in all honesty, considering how far away the event was set from like most civilization within Tokyo, I would say that was actually kind of a good thing, because the way it works is that the event itself would begin its setup, like putting up the posters and everything at 10 p.m. These circles would only enter to set up at 11 p.m. and then the event itself only begins at 1 p.m. And just to be sure that I wasn't crazy, I went to double check as well. For the subsequent hosting of this event at the Utau Center TRC, it's actually starting at 12:30 for the standard entrance to go in. So it does start a lot later than most other events. For those of you who need a point of reference, Comicat typically opens its doors at 10:30 a.m. whereas for Punicat and other events like it, they tend to start at 11:30 a.m. as well. So typically most of the other events, even with something like Punicat or Superheroine Time, when they start at the same location, they tend to begin the event a little earlier than the Vocaloid event does. And not only that, it does feel like the event itself also ends a little earlier, because with the hosting of the Vocaloid Master that's happening the next time around, it's gonna end at 4 p.m. And this time around when I went there, it also ended at 4:30 p.m. So while the event does extend a little bit later along with the later start for this time around, since it goes from 12:30 to 1 and 4 to 4:30, the event net I think is also an hour shorter than most of the other events. And that goes without saying that when it comes to Comicat, which already is running longer than all of the other events, this makes it a lot shorter. So for those of you who are really interested in the event, the good thing is that it starts late, so you can actually get a good night's sleep, prepare, you know, you can travel the 1 hour plus to get there and still get a good morning breakfast as well as getting proper sleep. But the event itself is a lot shorter, so you might want to also make sure you go a little earlier and get what you want, or browse in a way that's a little more efficient, because you don't get as much time to slowly walk around the event as with other ones. Although unfortunately they didn't really have the log for the total number of standard attendees, so I don't know how many people turned up for the event, but at the very least it did feel fairly packed at certain times of the day, and it also did feel like there were quite a lot of people mingling in, also watching some of the events that were happening within the hall itself, as well as walking around the circle area. So suffice to say, it did feel like a very lively event still nonetheless. I think what I found the most surprising with the event is that the amount of actual music circles was a lot less than expected. Like it was maybe 50% or less of the total event itself, which I guess in a way it does kind of makes sense as well, in the sense that if you were a music circle, you probably would also be going to events at M3. So for those who are really into music, be it Vocaloid, Toho, or anything else, you probably would already be going there. So the Vocaloid event, especially since it's held 4 times a year, there might be a little bit less of a rush that these people feel about getting to the event. So the number of music circles can be significantly lower than what I initially expected, at least. Also the fact that when I went there, I felt like I didn't really recognize any of of the music circles that were there at this point. Like most of the Vocaloid circles I followed, I feel like the ones that got really big, they just didn't turn up at the event. And many of them did also eventually go mainstream, you know, like Sadakena as well as Yonezu Kenshin. So it does feel like many of the names that I did recognize from back in the day just don't turn up at this event as well. But it was kind of interesting as a good way to see some of the newer faces that were going into the space, as well as some of those that had been slowly gaining popularity over time recently. Like for example, I did find someone who was making this cute ass looking thing over here. Like there was actually someone over there selling a bunch of different figures as well as other small pieces of art that they were selling. Like I found this one to be really cute, and the rest, they were a little more difficult for me to bring back at the time since they were a little bigger in size. And you know, this one actually was Miku instead of Luka, so I decided to go with this one instead. Kind of an adorable looking gremlin that looks like this. I think for the things, these little things at the top here, it actually comes with a few extras as well with different patterns instead, so you can kind of change it around should you actually want to have multiple with like different variations between them, since there is a little hole at the top for you to put it into over here, but it can only fit 4 at a time. So the remaining 2 that I do have spare can't really fit in, so we're just gonna go with this little gremlin this time. Also, one thing I remember was that he also did warn that because of the material itself, it actually melts fairly easily within high heat. So while I was out of town this entire time after going to the event, I actually had the air conditioner in my room on just so that we could keep this little gremlin nice and cold. But yeah, considering the fact that we're into summer right now, I don't know how well this little friend of ours might hold up. She might get a little wet in a very different way for all we know. Aside from that, there were also quite a few other people there selling different types of like cam badges as well as accessories. Unfortunately, I couldn't really find as much stuff that really fit what I usually look out for in terms of accessories, since I didn't really want to buy more can badges, and the keychains themselves weren't something that were like something I really wanted at the time. And in terms of these like jewelry and the like, while there was some very interesting necklaces as well as like earrings and the like, there really wasn't any that really fit the kind of style that I would usually want to wear, so I didn't manage to buy anything this time around. But next time around, maybe we'll find more interesting stuff. However, what I did get a lot more of was music instead, since, you know, for a lot of Vocaloid stuff, what would an event be without some music, right? Though one thing I do need to mention as well as the fact that it isn't just Vocaloid but also like the utau stuff as well. For those of you who do not know what utau is, it's basically like Vocaloid, but it's mostly shareware created by third parties instead of the big like corporations that create most of the other Vocaloid stuff. In Japan, I feel like typically people don't really discriminate between the two. I feel like sometimes overseas there are people who talk about there being like, hey, you prefer this over that, or although it does seem like the community for the most part really just shares the love for both as well. But as a result, you do see a decent amount of stuff for like Teto and Neru, as well as all of the other utaus as well, and not just. But yeah, overall I would say that the range was fairly diverse and there was quite a lot of different music to be found there as well. One other thing that I found to be really cool was the fact that they even had a little live performance area within the hall itself. So at certain times of the day, people who had basically preemptively like talked to the community and like set up a timing could just go there and set up a little performance showing off some of the music that they were either selling there or that they just wanted to play to entertain people with. And some of them were actually really good, although to be fair, I feel like you have to be really at least at a certain level to be willing to go to an event for this kind of music and then show off the performance that you're able to put on there. You know, it's not just like me going to the karaoke and only embarrassing myself in front of the people who come to bring me my drinks. I guess in front of you guys as well sometimes, but that's besides the point. Either way, it was really cool to actually see all of the different performances that people were putting on, and like some of them actually did tempt me into in the end purchasing the music that they had on sale as well. So instead, let's talk about the thing that I feel like I actually purchased the most of there, which was the music instead. So the first album is actually formed by someone called Yaduki. He was the person who was basically one of the performers on the day itself at the mini live area that the event had. I believe this entire album was done using mostly just the Vocaloid Yuzuki Yukari. And the guy himself is more of a guitarist as well as a bassist, so the thing that actually really struck me, especially during his live performances, was how good the guitaring he was actually doing at the spot was. I think he actually ad-libbed some of the guitar solos as well, so even for the songs that he was covering instead of playing his own original music, all of it, the guitar itself actually sounded really sick, and it really felt like it complements the music he does actually fairly well. Most of it, I won't call it pop-ish, although it does have that more like pop anime style, which I feel is a little difficult to explain since in general Japanese pop does have a little bit of a rock element, which is kind of different from how English pop typically tends to go. But yeah, I don't want to put too much time into just like playing the music without doing anything, so I'll just put a short excerpt of it here. You guys can listen to it for a little while I'll hide in the shadows of the Gaussian blur in the background.
しかったものとかを手に入れるたびこぼし落として
But yeah, as those of you who listen to quite a lot of Vocaloid music probably could tell, the music itself isn't something that is like too innovative style-wise. It does feel a lot like the more rock-ish Vocaloid music of maybe like the last 10 years, maybe like 2015-ish era. But he does do a pretty good job with the instrumentals in particular, so that was why I decided to buy the album to support the guy, and I did kind of enjoy the guitar a lot. Next up is one from a channel called Nnzomi over on YouTube. I think they should be fairly new since I think this was actually the first ever full album that they had released. I think what initially struck me with it was actually the art more so than anything else, since for me at this point most of the artists there, as I mentioned before, they're all names that are fairly new to me, but the art itself looked kind of familiar, so I went up to them and asked them if I could listen to the music, because like, you know, with other music events that most of these Doujin music groups go to, they actually do prepare the music itself so you can listen to it while you're at the event, and it actually felt really good to listen to. Like a lot of it felt a bit more on the more rock-ish side, as well as some of it being more on the electronic side as well. Mostly feels a little more downer-ish. I guess the word might be more like somber in nature as well, and all of that actually fit quite well with the cover of the album. Unfortunately, I couldn't find the artist who he actually got to make the art, more so because he did actually refer to the artist on Twitter, as in he thanked them and like linked to them, thanking them for helping to get the art done for the cover, but when I clicked on it, apparently the account didn't exist anymore, so I don't know what exactly happened with that, because he didn't mention anything about it either, so that was a little eerie. But suffice to say, the music itself was kind of very enjoyable, for me at least. So here's a short sample of it. One other thing that I really liked as well is the fact that he actually had the jacket in here, as you can see. For those of you Zoomers out there who have never seen a CD before, unfortunately, most of the groups at these events, they still use CDs. Some of them have their music up on YouTube, like a sample which you can listen to, and some may have online platforms, but some don't. And so for me personally, I do like having the CDs both for collection as well as having a built-in CD player into my PC tailored stages, so I can listen to all of this music as well. If you're really into this kind of music, I strongly do recommend just getting a CD player, be it an external one, which I think I had one here when I used to use a laptop mostly. And, you know, if not, a built-in one for your PC might work as well, especially if you're interested also in playing retro games, things from the PS2 and before. You can still actually purchase the disc and use the disc to then emulate the game legally, to some extent, I guess, depending on how you consider the treatment of the data itself, but that's besides the point. Either way, if you're interested in all of that, I do recommend getting it, just so you can also listen to most of the music at this kind of events. The funny thing though is that, according to him, the first few pages, they look very trippy like this. Like, I don't know how much of it actually shows, and apparently this was actually a printing error, so like, it ending up like this on the first few pages was not intended. It just so happens that the music apparently his booth did so well that he actually managed to sell out everything. So this was actually the very last disc he had left at the booth. It was kind of a funny interaction, just looking at him trying to explain that, and me going like, huh? I don't understand. What do you mean it doesn't look like this? It looks so drugged up and cool. Yeah, especially when you look at the back here and you realize that like this art itself was very blurred. I don't know how it looks looking at it through the camera, but like looking at it in real life actually fucks with my brain a lot, because it basically looks like very, very poorly blurred version, as if I'm gonna have a stroke or something at some point. And it actually does mess with my brain a lot also. When I saw this especially, and I saw the inside of the pages, it actually felt so fitting that it didn't strike me as being off at all at the time. The third group is one called Sekkiman, and no, I'm not just like showcasing them because of the fact that they gave me a free fan and that made me feel very cool. Quite literally, since it was actually really hot considering the fact that we're into summer now, so the fan did help a little, but that's not the point. This isn't me getting bribed by just a simple fan. I ain't no fool. But more so because the music itself actually struck me quite a little, since I think this was the first one I heard there that felt a lot more like just heavy metal-ish. Like, it's not really going into stuff at either end of the spectrum in terms of like power metal or going all the way to the other end towards like death or symphonic death. More so somewhere in the middle, closer to the original, like earlier years of heavy metal instead. So the music itself I kind of did enjoy quite a fair bit. The Vocaloid that they used as well was one that prior to this event I actually didn't know about. It was one actually called Rime from the Ongaku Doujin project, which is apparently a completely separate like voice synthesizer project that was set up by a completely different company called Kamitsubaki Studios. So the voices were actually kind of refreshing as well, since I didn't really recognize them until this point. So some people might have heard this before, maybe it's just me. Like, quite frankly, I think the only one from this group that I think I really have heard before is probably Kafu, which is the one that I feel like people usually talk about the most. But the thing is that I didn't even know it was specifically from this project, so that was a learning point, because like it was a name that I heard here and there. I was like, yeah, that sounds really cool, but at the same time didn't really know as much about. Yeah, as you can see, I'm a little out of the loop when it comes to the Vocaloid scene. There's some stuff that I didn't really catch up on over the years, but we are learning now, and this old man still got got tricks up his sleeve. But that said, this is the music itself in case there are some of you who are interested what it sounds like. It's not their first album, but one of their first few as well. And it actually kind of surprised me that they didn't actually have a bigger following than expected. Although the album that they had this time around felt a little more like a bit of a meme, and the guy in the very funny like festival mask there at the booth as well did feel like it kind of took away a little from the Vocaloidness of it, which might have maybe affected it on like maybe a marketing level or something. But overall, music was pretty enjoyable, and if you're interested, yeah, feel free to check them out as well. But that said, overall, I would say that the event itself was quite enjoyable. The location, I mean, to be fair, they did mention that this time around was a bit of an exception that it was where it was, so me complaining too much about it being really far away doesn't really make sense. And for people who had chosen, like let's say a tourist who came to Japan and decided to stay in the western half of Tokyo, they probably wouldn't have had as much of an issue as I did, to be honest. And for the people living in Tachikawa, this is probably going to be like one of the events that's closest to where they lived in most of the other events that have been till this point, so I can imagine there are many people who would have benefited from it, so I'm not going to harp too much on that for too long. Overall though, the number of circles actually quite impressive. The number of music circles, once again, I do feel like it was a little less than what I had expected, but overall it did feel like a celebration of Vocaloid and utau stuff on an overall more so, and it did get me an opportunity to see all the interesting stuff that people were making at the event. Like, there were actually some accessories that look really cool, like just based off of like Miku's own headbands and the like as well. Some might say that might be a little cliche in this day and age, but I do like the aesthetic that it has to begin with. So to me, all of those look really cool, and I feel like if I had more breath to be able to use all of this stuff, I probably would want to as well, purchase more. But who knows, maybe the next time around, considering the fact that it's happening in November again, and it's happening at a more accessible location with a little more time for me to walk around, maybe it'll be something that I will look out more for at that time as well. But it did bring me the little gremlin over there in terms of stuff that isn't music, and I do enjoy having that little gremlin around with that little cute ass derpy face, so no complaints when it comes to that, all things considered. Once again, with many of the smaller Doujin events though, I really do feel like they are the kind of things that I wouldn't recommend people come down specifically for. However, the fact that this event actually does also coincide with the Nico Nico Chokaigi does make it feel like it makes it a little easier for people to drop by for it, because if you plan to come down for that, right, for an event which celebrates the culture that Nico Nico used to have, for those of you who do not know, that's basically like the old Japanese YouTube where many of the big memes that you see in Japan initially came from, then it would coincide well enough that you could go for that and also experience this event. If you want to experience the standalone version of this event, I would say it's a little tough to decide when would be best to come down for it. If there is one at the start of the year, depending on how long of a trip you're planning to take, if it's maybe a month long, for example, you could probably stay around for this and then go through the whole of December, maybe even go to Comic Cat. Like, you can get a decent amount of stuff going on. If you're planning to go for the one in July that I went to this time around, I don't know if there is as much. It really depends on what you enjoy. Like, if you're planning to tour around the country, if you're planning to go to many other events, if you're into BL in particular, there's many other events that happen during this period. So for the Fujos or the Wotakus, it's not so bad, but for everyone else, it's a little tougher to find other events to coincide with. So I recommend, if you do not know what events are something that might interest you yet, I'll probably put a link to the website where I usually check for some of the Doujin events. The website is not fully comprehensive. There are many events that are very small and that you probably need to actually know that it's actually going on in order to be able to sign up for them. But overall, I would say if you're interested in those, you can use this to try and also sync up your events as well. That said, if you're really into Vocaloid stuff, I would say if you're into Vocaloid music, this is one of two events I would recommend. The other will be M3. But if you're interested in more so than just the music, but the overall culture and the celebration of the characters and all of the things that people come up with, be it like doujins, not so much adult doujins, because, and this was the interesting thing of this event, I don't think there were any adult doujin circles, save for just one in the corner, where the main focus wasn't even on their adult works, but more so on their like more horror-esque looking art style, where you had like Miku and the rest becoming like cyborg demon robots and stuff like that. Like, that was the main focus, and they had some art that was a lot of NSFW. But aside from that, the rest of the circles, I don't think I saw a single adult circle there, to be honest, which was quite impressive. Like, just the fact that the event really didn't have any form of NSFW content, because with most doujin events, say for maybe like an Uma Musume exclusive one or the Sega one we talked about, there tends to be a mix because people are allowed to freely express and make content that they enjoy, so you get a big variety. But with this one, I don't think I saw that restriction, but even then there really wasn't much, so that was certainly very different from the norm for what most other events in Japan have, so it was quite surprising to see that being the case at this event. But overall, if you're interested in that type of like just the culture of content creation around Vocaloid stuff in general, not just the music, but the accessories and the goods that people produce, as well as content in the form of like comedy moments or like slice of life or comedy doujins, yori doujins, where the focus is more on just like character interactions and giving people more like content around the Vocaloid stuff that enjoy, then I would say that this is actually quite a good event overall to drop down for as well. But that's it. That's all from me for today. Thank you guys for watching. I hope this was an interesting event to you guys too. There are probably going to be a lot more other Vocaloid events out there as well, so I'll keep a lookout, and for those of you who are interested, you can look forward to hopefully me not being able to completely botch it up, and we'll actually see more of these in the future where I talk about some of these smaller events as well, because I'm pretty sure there are many others for Vocaloid stuff in particular due to its popularity. But that said, thank you to the following very cool people for helping to support the channel. It's thanks to you guys that I'm able to keep doing what I do while working the way I work, and thank you to every one of you who just even help by watching the videos themselves, since it gives me more motivation to make all the stuff in general, and to everyone else who helps to support me in all the different ways, like helping to edit the videos and all. That's it. Until next time, let me go grab the little goblin over. Oh, goblin! Oh, thank goodness, she's fine. Don't worry, she's fine, she's fine. She might have lost her head a little, but I did find all of the pieces, so it's fine. We can rebuild her. We have the technology. Whew, there we go. But that's it. Until next time, take care and bye-bye.